Uh, Today, I like the topic. I'm personally much more involved now in sustainability, and when Manuel told me he would speak about this topic, I found it super interesting. Manuel is from my region in Spain, Pamplona, Navarra, so we have that in common. And I think he's also passionate about projects in energy. And I do think that the future around project management is very much close to sustainability and social impact beyond going to the traditional scope and goals. I'm really excited to hear um, Manuel's presentation and then have interaction and see what you see. I think you're coming, some of you are in countries which are leading as well in terms of energy and sustainability. So
Yes, Sweden number
yeah,
one.
yeah. So I'll leave the floor to Manuel. Thank you already, and we'll have a bit of discussion afterwards.
Okay, thank you so much, Antonio. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we see it, Manuel.
Okay. Yep. So hello everyone. Trending topic today. We are going to talk about sustainability projects, and as there are so many things that we could say about sustainability and projects, we are going to approach and doing a zoom in into wind energy projects. So we are going all together at the end of the session. We are going to build our wind farm, our own brand new wind farm, which is uh, called Feel the Wind. So Feel the Wind is going to be our wind farm. And at the end of the session, I would like you to have a better understanding of sustainability projects, what wind energy is doing about that, the trends, and how a wind energy wind farm is built. Okay, so let's go ahead with this index, understanding the context, setting the baseline. We are going to lead, although you might not know as of now, we are going to lead a wind energy project as if we were project managers. We are going to build a field wind farm, and three takeaways so that we can then later on talk about that. So what about sustainability and the planet? So it's, like I said, a trending topic these days. We hear about that all day, that we need to comply with sustainable and development goals, and we can do sustainable things in many of these 17 goals. We can do in the 7, affordable and clean energy. We can do it in climate action. We can go for the sea and with life below wet water, life on land. There are many things that we can do in sustainability. And let's say we have the Paris Agreement, that is like our framework, that we don't have to admit that we don't have to increase the temperature in our planet, but not only temperature, but also having better capacity to adapt to climate changes, to reduce losses, for example, with the winds and with the storms, and things like that. Every year there are lots of losses. So if we have a preventive approach, then we can also prevent those things and save money and have a better planet. And what's the goal? The goal is very clear: to be carbon neutral by 2050. What does it mean? That all that we pollute is compensated by clean energy. So net zero emissions. And we can say, for example, there are several examples that brings light on this. So from the European perspective, we have the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which aims for 672 billion in loans and grants. But what is more important, 37 of them, about 245 billion, needs to be allocated to support climate objectives, whatever they are, but supporting climate objectives. So when there is money on the table, that is, yeah, really a clear target that we are going there. For example, the US also is setting also their targets. For example, we heard some weeks ago that, for example, in the offshore wind energy, the wind energy produced with wind turbines in the sea, only a couple of very small projects, prototype projects, were installed in the US so far, but the US administration has unlocked an 800 megawatts wind farm in the sea, which is a huge wind farm, which unlocks the potential for the coming in the region of Massachusetts. Um, Also, for example, we hear Bill Gates setting an agreement with the European Commission to fund seed projects in this climate change. So there's lots of movements here. And in November, just another situation point with the Conference of Parties in Glasgow. So all the countries will gather again to strengthen their commitment and mobilize funds. So as I'm mentioning, there are lots of things that we can do in sustainable projects. And here are just some examples, like in wind, for example, the onshore wind. We have cars, electric vehicles, the hydrogen, for example. It's easy to maybe to have electric vehicle car, small car, but how can we do that for planes or for big vessels or for trains? Can they be carbon neutral buildings to be more efficient in our, just with better windows? It's set to reduce 30% the consumption of energy in a regular house. And also the combination of those technologies. So innovation in this sector is very relevant. Everything is not said, everything is not written, but with that 2050 target, there are lots of things to do. Not and what is needed to be clear here, it's not that just the innovations in the industry or in the homes or with more education. It's just all the infrastructure that goes around it, because it's useless that we have, like, for example, bigger wind turbines, bigger cars, electric cars, if we don't have the infrastructure to support that. If we don't have the education of people to use them properly. So, so yeah, there is a huge road ahead, 30 years from now until 2050, which is the target. Many others, and as there are many possibilities, we invite you to zoom into wind energy and to see how wind energy is developing. Because, for example, in Europe is intended that around 30 to 50% of the global energy consumption in Europe in the 250 comes from wind energy. So it's like the leading renewable energy that we are going to analyze. And not only analyze, as I'm saying to you, we are going to build our own field wind farm for this group of people. Okay, so what are the facts? This 2020 was the a year of pandemic, but it was not bad at all. But for wind energy, it was the best year in history. Even though we need to install the wind farms outside, not in the cities, not in a controlled area, but in the mountains or in the middle of the sea, the teams have been capable to develop projects and to reach agreements with health institutions, with local unions, with regulations, and with everything in place. It's been a record year in the industry. And you can see that not only in the onshore, which is the wind turbines on the ground, but also on the sea. And what are the main the main developers? The main developers are in China and in the US for the onshore part. Very big wind farms there. And in the offshore side, the wind farms at the sea, also China, but in Europe, the United Kingdom, Germany are also leading countries. And as I mentioned, the US is playing big in this sector also, just with the approval of the first utility scale offshore wind farm, because we don't only need to see current trends, which is sustainable growth, but also that the outlook is very, very promising, both in onshore and and also in offshore. So, but this is just figures and numbers. I would like also to show you these day-to-day figures that always are very good to compare with something. For example, we mentioned that there are 35 gigawatts in offshore wind energy, but what's that? That is 62 million of tons of carbon dioxide emissions that have been avoided. It's like 20 million cars off the road. So that you have the impression. Or for example, one wind turbine in onshore, average size 5 megawatts, it's like the consumption of 1,000 homes per year. So one just wind turbine of 5 megawatts. Imagine what 743 megawatts, gigawatts can do for the planet. And also not only in consumption, but I would like, for example, one average wind turbine, more or less 195 meters, is about 65 floors. We are talking about big components here. This is not a sector where we will see agile ways of project management, but very, very predictive. We know exactly what is going to happen at the end of the installation. So just as a comparison, the Statue of Liberty is 93 meters, and one wind turbine with all the blades, 195. For example, an 80-meter blade is as wide as an Airbus 3800. And 80 meters is not the longest blade. More or less now in the sector is about 110 meter blade, which is a football stadium, for example. Imagine a football stadium and it's just one blade. What are the implications for that? 100 tons, one of the components in the nacelle, which is 70 average size cars. And if you want to know your carbon footprint, you can easily find on the internet several resources for calculating yourself. It's funny, and you can see in your average consumption how you can improve, and all those things. So far so good. We see a sector with global commitment, with trending topic, very good figures, innovation, and that it has a roadmap that not only to innovate, but also to do very good green things for the planet. So I'm sure you are all ready to build your own field-the-wind farm and to produce green renewable energy. Okay, so first things is this sector all about projects, or is not about projects? And let me show you some images to illustrate. This is a wind farm. This is in the sea. They are different. And for example, these are two towers that are being transported to their location on site. That would be around 700 tons. Of course, we have projects, because every project is different and every wind farm is customized. every wind farm is customized. For example, other images. No, we have a wind farm there in the desert, one in the with snow, green areas, very flat, and not, others with high mountains in the sea. This is, and here in the desert, in the middle of nowhere. So this is all about projects. This is all about yeah, things that are unique, and this is a very, yeah, it's a characteristic of this kind of not only wind energy but also solar projects, for example, that they are customized, because there is no other place like the place that we are installing. Um, Everything is customized and the supply chain is global. Okay. Okay, so we are all about projects. We have seen the images so that you have a view, a clear view of what is it. And what do we need to do to build a wind energy project? It will be more or less similar to solar also. We are all in a company. We have the product lifecycle management, and we have three phases. The development phase, that will take several years. It's not just signing a contract. We will see afterwards. The execution phase, where we really install the wind farm and the operations and maintenance of the wind farm. We have the and we go all the way from a paper. This is very exciting about projects. We go all the way from a project to manufacturing, to logistics, to construction, to produce energy, and to close out the project, always with quality, with health and safety, because we are not moving papers or very small things. You see that there are big components, and health and safety is always at the top of the priorities. How we work at the office, but the real work is done there away on a harbor, in the sea, there on the ground, in the mountains. So we need to have very clear procedures, very clear health and safety regulations. We, as I mentioned, we don't do agile here. It's predictive project management. We know exactly what it needs to happen. We have procedures, we follow the procedures, we know how much energy is going to produce the wind turbine. We know when it's installed and when it's not, and we don't really start and see like the agile of, okay, let's build up from here. No, we know from the beginning what it needs to happen. Okay, and each phase is like a project itself. And I would like to invite you to this question for afterwards about leadership. What it means about leadership. These projects that are all about different locations, very big components, people outside, people at the office, external authorities, global institutions, multilateral agencies, investment funds, private bankings, public funding, governments. There are lots of stakeholders. This is another key characteristic of this kind of projects. And we can develop a project in one developing country, and also we can develop another project in one of the most industrialized countries. So leadership is different in each of these kind of projects. But for example, a project manager leads people, and he or she might not know those people and might never even know in person those people, but he or she needs to lead the project. So maybe empathy, diplomacy, assertiveness. There are people from different nationalities working together in different places of the world. So leadership is very, very relevant. Okay, and four things that if you need to remember, four things that appear in every project. We have a contract that we follow, and not only the contract, but the procedures, the instructions, the standards, that is very relevant. There are people, like in any other project, globally based and in different parts of the world. There are risks. So we start the project from a baseline and then we monitor risks all the time. Risk management is very, very relevant. And also we apply learnings, because a project like this maybe will take the minimum 2, 3, 4 years. So there are lots of times to understand what it happens and to learn from each project so that we can implement in other projects or in the following project. And this, if we need to say, this happens in all the projects, in every project. Okay, so we have understood the context, one sector that is growing. We know that this is all about projects. We know that risk management, people, leadership are very important. We know the baseline, and then we are moving forward. We are going to install our field wind farm step by step. Okay, we start from the sales and development phase. And here is transforming the idea into a wind energy project. And you have a picture here because this is a met mast. We don't install a wind farm in a place that is not measured. We measure the wind there, we measure the condition, we design the wind turbines customized for that place. And what is very relevant in this development phase is that there are no misunderstandings. So the contract is very important, that is very accurate. This is what I'm mentioning. We need to know exactly from the beginning what is going to happen. Very detailed. The more detailed, the better. So there are no misunderstandings during execution, because imagine that there is one single mistake, can cost millions. So it's important that there is a realistic, but also very detailed contract. And starting from the first, so that you have a clear image of what's in it. Maybe you see a wind turbine or you see a solar panel, but it's like in a house. There are lots of things behind the ground, and this is the foundation. The foundation, which is made of concrete regularly, and the electric substation on the right, so that everything is prepared to receive the energy from the wind turbines and also to install the tower there up on the foundation. And before going there, it was just a land. But now, after this phase, is a land managed to be able to install a wind farm. Regularly, there are lots of subcontractors working there. So coordination of activities is very relevant, because we mix their teams from the customer, teams from a subcontractor, teams from the supplier, electrical works, civil works. So there are many stakeholders. So coordination is a key aspect in this phase. When the foundation is ready, we have the manufacturing of the components, and we manufacture, everything is customized for that project. So here, very relevant, the factory is a controlled environment, and the wind farm is not. There is a factory there, there is a facility, and there is not a facility in the mountains or in the middle of the sea. There is nothing. So it's very relevant to do a proper handover there. This would be the key for a good handover, so that everything is well tracked, everything is according to its specifications, and we know that is the last time that the product is going to be in a controlled environment. And also, it's a very relevant moment for a customer, or for an investment fund, or for a multilateral fund. Why? Because it's the first time that the components are seen physically. until that moment, there were only papers and drawings and documents, but now you can see the component, you can see a tower, you can see a blade, you can see a nacelle, you can see a foundation. Okay, so this is the first time that customer and stakeholders can see their components. So it's quite an exciting moment, this end of fabrication. And once they are manufactured, we are going to transport them, and we are going to see how we transport them. And as I mentioned, this is a global industry. So components come from all over the place. So customs are always needed, always needed. So we see those components, the nacelle on the left. We can see a special track for the for one of the sections of the tower. We can see the blades. And as I mentioned in you, for example, 10 years ago, more or less, there were concerns in the industry that it wouldn't be possible to transport a blade uh, with more than 60, 70 meters. And there were some innovations to have a two-section blade that was, for example, assembled into a single blade on site. But innovation came into the game, and now the tracks are more efficient. The tracks can move the boom, so the blade can be positioned in different positions, so that we can transport bigger blades with let's say newer tracks. So this is an example of how innovation can come into place, and maybe there are things that we don't even foresee as of today that in a couple of years will be a reality. For example, these blades of 100, 110 meters, we have factories there at the harbor, and vessels manufactured specifically to install those blades. So this is why I'm mentioning that it's not just the blades or the components are bigger and bigger, because they need to be bigger, and I'm going to explain you why. But it's also the infrastructure and the transportation that needs to come with it. And why do they need to be bigger? Because if we go, for example, to the sea, and we are 100 kilometers to the sea, and we need to bring a cable from a position to the land, then it's exactly the same to have one cable for a 5 megawatts machine than for a 10 megawatts machine, than for a 15 megawatts machine, or for a 50 meters blade, or for a 100 meter blade, or for a 150 meters blade. It doesn't matter. So it's more efficient if we have bigger components that produce more energy, so that is more cost efficient to do all the works needed to transport that energy. And here we can see the blades, for example, in the harbor, how we have dedicated vessels for that, in the sense that everything goes to the position. And you can see that they are all very big components. So it's not the same if the factories are in the same country as the wind farm is installed, or if they are in different countries. The logistics is not the same. And here, an overview of the construction, because now we are moving forward from the papers. There is a product we have transported, and then we are installing it on the site. Every site is different. And here is very important to be very accurate, to have very good forecasts, because you can see the crane lifting the sections, how the blades are installed. Imagine that one single mistake here costs millions of euros. And what is more important, safety is at the top of the priorities, because if one of those blades or those components fall down, it can cause, let's say, fatal injury, maybe. Okay, so different views, so that you can have the perspective of what we are installing here. Okay, and outside, you can see people there outside, and you have people at the office, you have people at the banks, you have people at the multilateral institutions, at the governments that are waiting for that wind farm to start the production. So communication is very relevant. Everything needs to be formalized, no verbal conversations, no verbal agreements, but everything very well agreed in written. And with good handovers from face to face, so that it's clear what is my responsibility, what is your responsibility, what is my scope, what is your scope, so that everything moves forward smoothly. And when we have installed everything, we reach the final and more important step, that is producing energy. We need to click the button to connect with the cables the wind turbines and the substation, the electrical substation, and it's magic. We have here our wind farm, our field wind farm, that is producing green energy for the planet. And let me tell you that this is a very exciting moment, because 2, 3, 4 years ago, maybe we have just documents and a contract, and now with all of you here in some slides, we have our wind farm with quality, safety, and of course with a customer that is satisfied with our wind farm, that is called Field Wind. We need to collect all the documentation that is available for the banks, for the institutions, for the government, for the customers. We need to collect the learnings, and we need to celebrate, because here with all of you, we have installed this Field Wind wind farm. So we have made it not only a sector that is developing, we have understood how to build the wind farm, we have done it. So congratulations. And 3 takeaways for closing out my presentation, and also to starting the dialogue. I want to introduce you to the international standards, the combination of methodologies, the governance, and of course, that is all about people, all about people working together in different places, with different nationalities, different approaches, different understandings, different interests, but all of them need to come together and make the project come true. So in this context, international standards are really important. Number one solid approach, one common language, multiple stakeholders. We need international standards. We need to agree on what international standard we are going to follow, not only in project management, not only in project execution, but also in how to measure our components, whether they are quality okay, how to evaluate safety, how to do the contract management. We stick to international standards for that, so that it doesn't matter if we are leading a project in the US, in Europe, in Africa, in Australia, or in APAC, it doesn't matter. We follow the international standard. Combination of methodologies. The basics is predictive approach, because we know exactly what is going to happen. But we also use agile methodologies in problem solving. If there is a problem, we need to understand what happens. We need to raise with a root cause analysis. We need to come back with a solution, and there we use agile. So in the combination of both of methodologies, in the combination of different alternatives, then there is the key. It's not just one single approach for all, but it will depend on the situation. It will depend on what we are talking about. And the last one is governance, because as I'm saying, um, there are many, many, many stakeholders in a project like this one, and there are many, let's say, millions involved. Let's say one project like this one can really cost 100 million euros, something like that. An average project, or even 200 million. It depends on the size, but we are talking about millions here. So governance is very relevant, because we are managing people at the office, people at site, virtually. There are different project phases in parallel. Here we have seen it everything in a sequence, but a project can have products in manufacturing, others in logistics, others in construction, others in commissioning phase. So it's needed to coordinate everything. And for that, as always, people make the difference. Always people make the difference. How we are able to lead people to have the empathy and the understanding, sometimes be very patient to reach agreements, and build up this wind farm, this fill the wind wind farm that we have all installed together. So thank you so much. Um, I hope we have covered this sustainability as a sector, as a topic today, um, the market, and also this particular example of a wind energy project that we have all together built, Fill the Wind Farm. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manuel. Super, super interesting. I love this topic, and I know it was challenged for many years, saying what's the added value, and it's all taking lots of money and finally showing that it's the way forward. So I love it. I don't think we need breakout groups. I think the presentation is so broad that I will just open for any questions, comments on the topic, around the topic, questions to Manuel, your vision. So just keep a kind of plenary discussion for the next 15 minutes. So either raise your hand or just jump in.
Well, I have something I want to ask. Thanks, Manuel. That was a fabulous presentation. It was really interesting, and it provided a lot of different aspects of why wind energy is a really viable one for the present and for the future. In fact, it's been viable for a really long time. I remember some 5 years ago being in Portugal with my cousin at a university campus there, which is right on the coast, right, literally on the coast. They have some salt mines there, and there's a university that's placed right along the shore. And they had a wind farm, just one wind tower, and that wind tower generated enough energy for them to subsidize their university expenses and cover all of their university campus costs. So I've known for a while that that wind power is a really viable solution. Now, my question to you would be, for wind power in different regions, say, on the coast, or say in the desert, or in plains, or up in the mountains, do you notice that people have to, or that your customers have to adjust for efficiencies in energy draw from the wind towers? Do you have to make significant changes to the equipment, the actual wind equipment that's deployed, depending on the region?
Yeah, it totally depends on the region, on the wind, on the needs, on the money that the customer wants to spend. Everything is customized, and so this brings challenges in execution, because it's not just a standard product that that we can install. It's not, for example, in the sea, the wind is very constant because there are no mountains. So you don't need very tall wind turbines, because it's very easy to catch good wind. But if you are, for example, in the north side of Europe, where the good places are already taken, you need to go up into the mountains. You need very high towers. So the product is totally customized. I would also like to build up on your first comment when you were in Portugal, and that
The University of Aveiro, it's actually.
yeah, that wind farm or wind turbine was able to provide enough energy for the consumption of the place. This is something that is very good in this kind of business. Why? Because it's not just spending money on something and a one-off. The wind turbines or the solar panels are going to remain there for years to come. So they are going to need maintenance, and we are not going to maintain that from headquarters. You need to train local people. So those local people, for example, I am currently involved in a project in a region in Africa which is called Djibouti and Ethiopia, one of the developing countries. So let's say that there is very few infrastructure there. So these kind of projects that are going to remain will then bring training for local people to do the maintenance, maybe education, small schools. So this is how we are, let's say, these can be sustainable projects, not only in the making, but also in the years to come.
That's great, and I'm glad to know that they are effective at mountain ranges, because for example, the development project that I'm involved in, which is a linguistic project, but it's articulated into a larger regional development project, which includes electrification and other economic development in the region, is up in the mountains, and there's lots of mountains in Peru. So I'm always on the lookout for really good solutions to be able to make suggestions. So it's great to know that that your company does that.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, and not only in these big components, but also we can do let's say many things in our day-to-day lives in our projects. We can save efficiencies. Yeah, sustainable, and the climate is a very broad project, so that we wanted to just narrow down and put a real example on the wind energy to make it more like visible. Feel the wind that we have all installed together.
That's great. Thanks so much.
There is a question from Thomas Valenta. I'll pick one from the chat. Thomas.
You are mute.
You're on mute, Thomas. No, you're unmuted. Let's go to Christian. He has also put a question here. And the others, just raise your hand if you want. Christian.
Yes, regarding, let me see, I put two questions actually, and I think I'll choose the leadership one, which is the one closest to my heart. What about, you wrote empathy. First, thank you very much, muchas gracias, for a very nice presentation. Very interesting how you build turbines. So that was nice. So the question is, in what way does the need for empathy in leadership as a leadership trait differ from other projects? In my view, it's always needed, but please explain.
Yeah. Empathy and leadership are key elements in project management. But why I brought this into the table in this conversation? Because we can have different kind of projects. We can have, for example, projects where all the team members are there in the same space and they talk to each other every day. And agile projects, for example, like developing software, for example, you need to be always solutions, and you build prototypes, and then you come up with another solution, and it's very fast, like quick. Here, let's say you are not all together. You are multi-site, different people, different nationalities, different interests, because you have the supplier, you have the customer, then you have the multilateral institutions. For example, one project that I was involved in one developing country, that that was actually an agreement between two countries that didn't have, let's say, anything to do between them. But in the United Nations, they agreed on, well, common interest. So that one country would fund that investment in the other country, and the other country funded another project. It was a win-win alliance. So governments are also there. So there are so many stakeholders and so many different perspectives, that even different time zones, that that empathy is very needed, very needed. Because I'm, for example, from Spain, and I might be talking to a person in APAC or in the US, on the in the north side of Europe. We don't understand things in the same way, but in the end, we have a common goal. We need to go from a contract to a real wind farm, field wind farm that is real, and that produces clean energy. In this sense, I think this is particular, not different, but has these particular aspects of that we are not all together there at the same time, figuring out on like solutions.
So if I understood, thank you, Manuel. If I understood you correctly, then because of the complexity and because of the project team being spread all around the world in offices and also teleworking, of course, that the empathy as a leadership trait is even more important than in a normal project or in other projects. Is it what you're saying?
Yeah, I think maybe it's not more important, but in this kind of projects, I think it's a key element. It's a key element. Yeah. Even, for example,
yeah, even more than others.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Even, for example, in the 2020, there was the pandemic year, and all of us were working from home. But you have seen in the statistics that wind energy raised a record installation in that year. So so teams on site then are working, but then there are people at home. So there are different situations, but all of us want to come to solutions and agreement to make that happen. And how we approach those situations, that maybe there is a pandemic, but there are people on site working. Yeah, I think it requires empathy, and it's a very good quality to lead people.
Excellent, thank you.
There's one question from Andre.
Hi, Manuel. Just two questions. One, it's about floating offshore. I've been reading about floating offshore because doing some infrastructure in the offshore is too expensive, and maybe floating offshore will be a easier option to go offshore. And another question is about, as always see also the use of surplus of wind energy toward hydrogen. What do you see about this?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, for the first question, there are different foundations, and floating is one type of foundation that yeah, it floats. And the wind turbine, it's up there and it floats. It really floats, and it is attached to one sling, to three. It depends on the size, but let's say that 3 slings to the seabed. And yeah, we are developing actually a project in the south region of France that is like being a prototype for all that region to see that they have, let's say, that they go into full scale. And yeah, let's say it's not so expensive to install. So it brings this cost efficiency that yeah, might work. There are 3 types of foundation, so this is one of them. And in terms of the hydrogen, this is one like these innovations that everyone is waiting for, because it allows us to yeah, to bring energy from the hydrogen that is, let's say that it's all over. But there is a very good potential combination between wind and hydrogen, because, for example, in the water, we can extract the hydrogen from the water, and we have wind there, also wind energy. So this is, let's say, this is something that everyone is talking about, and that, but it will take some years, but let's see. It will be a source of green renewable energy, the green hydrogen, that can be the disruptive innovation in the sector. But many things need to be said still on that. Yeah.
I see there's some projects around in Portugal and also in Denmark. Denmark is expected to build an artificial island to provide hydrogen by the wind in Denmark, and also because they say there is a green hydrogen and also the gray hydrogen, and there's some difference. But it's important to understand that it's an option, because maybe sometime we will have some surplus of energy and don't have hydrogen to be a possibility to storage those energy.
Yeah, that thing that you say about the storage is very relevant, because there is, let's say, there is renewable energy all the day and night, but consumption is not the same day or night. So having good batteries that can go full scale, that would really be another disruptive innovation, how we can, let's say, produce green energy, for example, during nights, save it, and then use it when it's more needed in the daylight, with the daylight. Yeah, let's see. There is another path for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's one last question from Philippe, the last one. Philippe.
You are mute.
Apologies about that. I thought I had unmuted. Do you have guaranteed markets for the power you generate?
Is anything guaranteed in life?
No, I'm
guaranteed market. You mean that, let's say that you know who you are selling to?
Yeah, I mean, do you actually have people willing to buy the power?
Yeah, there are different schemes. For example, you can sell, let's say, the energy like to the market. Let's say there is a market that trades in the stock market, and the price varies. But what is more usual these days is what is called the PPAs, the price production agreement. For example, imagine that you are an oil and gas company, and you have CO2 emissions, and you want to compensate. You cannot decide the energy that you receive in your house or in your factory, but you know your consumption. So you can buy this instrument, this price purchase agreement, to a company, for example, to a renewable energy company, and you can buy the same amount of renewable electricity energy as you consume. So this is what is called net zero carbon neutrality. Let's say that your impact is net zero. And there is this PPA. There is, for example, Google or Amazon. They are buying PPAs for their or Microsoft or these big companies. They are buying PPAs from companies so that they can compensate their emissions. There are public PPAs, and there are also private PPAs. There are also something that is very popular because it reduces the costs a lot, which are auctions. Auctions in the big markets, and you submit your offer, and and there are certain conditions, and if you are the winner, you know that you are going to send your energy at a certain price that is fixed. So there are different mechanisms that it's not warranted, but yes, that gives you the necessary outlook so that you can draft your project finance consistently for the following 20-25 years, which is more or less the average lifetime.
The reason why I ask is I've just done an evaluation. It didn't work, so I'll be absolutely clear about it because it was too big. But for a photovoltaic, a solar energy power supplier, who will only take on projects of at least 500 megawatts. And what he does is he negotiates with governments or major power companies for a long-term supply of this, and then it's a total turnkey project. But he starts from the standpoint of having sold the power first. Then he takes on all the responsibility for the infrastructure, for the batteries and everything else. And he has, and for what I can understand, he's enjoying a lot of success all around the world. And he's particularly out competing wind power. That photovoltaic now has got to a price point which makes conventional turbines, wind turbines, price uncompetitive against what he's doing. But I mean, these are big, big plants. I mean, I was looking at him, bringing him to Malta, but I mean, he was going to supply 25% of the country's power. It was just too big, too chunky. Although we're extremely well set up here. We've got 5 areas offshore the islands with particularly shallow water, where offshore makes a lot of sense. And I think there's a 100 million euro project for turbines going in as a trial in the next few years.
Yeah. And this is what I mentioned, that it's not only having the wind turbines and having the good conditions, sea conditions and the wind condition, but also having the infrastructure so that we can make that happen there with vessels, with roads, with energy networks, with funding instruments that make this project be viable, and the project finances make sense. So yeah.
Thank you.
For me, just as a sum up, as a wrap up, for me, what is great, and I hope to see here the passion of building this kind of sustainable renewable projects is that we are going all the way through from just an idea of there is a land and or a sea or a building that can be more efficient, and just an idea, and how we can make all the way through, and we see all those instruments producing green energy, not only a one-off, but also that remain on the land, and that are sustainable for the people they are living there, making they more let's say develop due to these sustainable projects.
Thank you very much. Couldn't think a better way to close the session. I'm sure we'll hear much more around this topic. So thank you, Manuel, and thank you. Good to see you all. Keep well, and we'll see each other in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, be well. See you. Have a nice evening. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.